We are back for Do This, Not That, presented by Marigold. And this is our special series, My Path. We're digging into people's career journeys that are doing really cool and fun and different things. And we got a great one today. We got Zach Galia today, and he is the director of social media content strategy for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Come on, we are family. I'm like Willie Stargell right now. But he's not only been doing this with Pittsburgh Pirates, he was the actual first member, okay, of the Pittsburgh Steelers social media team. He ran social at the Arizona Cardinals Football Club. The guy knows social media. We're excited to have him on here. Zach, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, man. You're hyping me up pretty good. It feels pretty good.
Does everybody that work at the Pirates like walk around just singing "We Are Family" from like back in the day, or no?
I mean, there's probably a few people here that were around back when that happened, but yeah, it's a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I love it. I love all of it. So we want to dig into, there's so many people out there that are listening that maybe they want to get involved and have a career in social media. And you're sitting there with this really cool title at this really cool brand, a brand that everybody knows. Like, how do I get to be that guy? How do I break in to do that? So can you first, before we get into like your tips for breaking in, how'd you get on this path? How'd you wind up where you are today?
It's honestly it's kind of an interesting journey. I think everyone who is in my position at this point in time, I think has come up a different way just because, when I was in college, like I graduated college in 2011, like social media really wasn't a career path at that point. Like it was still something that people were figuring out and there were brands that were involved, but it wasn't like here are the courses I'm going to take, here's the path I'm going to take to get to one day, be in this seat. So, I mean, I went to college, Adrian College, it's a small school in Michigan, and basically to play hockey and then figure out what life was after that. And, I'd always been very interested in sports, but also like the creative artistic side. And, I painted, I wrote, loved graphic design, loved video production. So I wasn't sure how those two worlds were going to collide. When I first signed up for classes at school, it was I was going to be an architect, and then realized how much books cost and supplies, and bailed on that almost immediately. And then I was just trying to figure it out. And I had this awesome class about just kind of like the introduction to like mass communications. And it was about radio and film, early film, and just all the production and things that go into it, and kind of fell in love with that and wrote it as far as I could. So after college, thought I was going to go to film school until I realized, it was going to be another $150,000 a year to do something like that. So, kind of decided let's think of something else. So, took a couple kind of random jobs. Worked at the college for a little bit. Ended up coaching hockey for a little bit, and then was kind of presented with this opportunity at the Speedway in Michigan to come in and do some creative stuff. And I thought I was going in to manage their YouTube account and kind of lead their video production and that side of things. And within a month in that role, my boss called me in and was like, you're not really living up to expectations, which as someone who's been an overachiever, perfectionist my entire life, basically, crushed my soul to hear something like that. But basically, she was like, I thought you would take over all of our social media accounts by now. Like, didn't even know that was part of the job. Consider it done. And so from that point on, I was calling, asking people who are doing this for a living, like, how do you do this? How do you create content for a brand? How do you put a calendar together? Like, how do you achieve goals that are outside of what you know? And so, there were so many great people who, took my calls and were willing to jump on the phone and talk. And that really kind of started my journey. And so it's like, I always say I almost got into this industry by accident. And then, 11 years into my career, I don't know what else I'd be doing. So then, 2 years with the Speedway, and really learning everything I could. And it's a small, scrappy team where I think there was four of us who probably could have been seven or eight different departments combined. But learned a lot about graphic design, about the strategy, about photography, about event coverage, kind of creating something out of nothing, which is, I will always credit that job with that, because I mean we had two races a year, and then 364 other days, or 363 other days where there was nothing happening. And so, got really good at creating something out of nothing. And so 2 years there, learned all I could. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I grew up in Pittsburgh, happened to be looking for kind of their first ever full-time social media person in 2015, and somehow out of the thousands of applicants, they took a chance on me. And I again, I took the opportunity, I ran with it, I did all that I could to learn, what it meant to manage a global brand now. Not one of however many NASCAR tracks there are in the country, but like a global, you're wearing a Steeler hat in Brazil, what that logo is. How do I, take that pressure and take that responsibility and go with it and build what digital should look like and social should look like there. So, 4 years working with a lot of great people and learned a ton and, learned the ins and outs of working with the other departments that basically were confined into our team with the speedway, and working with partners and working with ticket sales and working with the community aspect and everything in between, and players and the football staff, and really found my way and found my voice, found how I did things best, and anything from like developing a content calendar all the way through like how do I cover a game, how do we do this, how do we do that. So um, took a lot of time and spent 4 years there, really honing my craft and learning a lot and growing, and then was able to take that next step and get the leadership position with the Cardinals. And I'd never been to Arizona before my interview, and
Wow.
I'd always dreamed of living somewhere nice and warm, and this was that chance. And luckily walked into a great opportunity with great people, and again learned a lot. And you'll see that that's kind of the general theme of this journey is I worked with a lot of really good people who taught me a lot and were very open with their experience and their feedback, and really helped me on my journey. So spent 3 years there. Took on different roles where I was the director of social, then I was director of all digital content, then I was director of digital strategy, and kind of took on a little bit more each time. And then around the end of my third season, my daughter was born. And so I'm from Pittsburgh, my wife's from outside of Toronto. It's time to get back home. And so luckily enough, this job with the Pirates, hometown team, go work for the Buccos, came up, and I've never looked back. So it's great, and it's still surreal to look out my window and see, inside of PNC Park, and just experience the things that I get to experience every day is a blessing. And going back all the way to the beginning is just the people who just took my initial phone call when I was with the Speedway and had no idea what I was doing. Those are the people who helped me get to where I am today, and it's definitely been a fun ride.
That's amazing. I'm sorry that you couldn't stay in the warm weather, but I'm
Yeah.
happy that you are now your family is all together. It's a really cool story that happened at like kind of like the birth almost of social media in a lot of ways. So let me ask you this. If I'm out there and I'm listening to this, I may say, well, he hit it before social media was a thing. I mean, the Steelers didn't even have a social media employee, so couldn't be that hard to get a social media job. Now everybody thinks they're a social media expert, right? And so, what would you tell people today if they want to get into social media as a career? What do you look for when you're hiring people for your team? What is the thing to break in?
I mean, the one thing I always say is like, is try and find your specialty. Like for me, it was I could do everything. And back when I was getting into the industry, like you said, there was nobody. So it was like, we need to find someone who can do these 19 things all at the same time. Now it's like you said, everyone's kind of building out their team the way that they see fit, depending on what their goals are, in the organization, the sport that, you're in, the brand that you work for. It all kind of goes into that factor and that decision. So for me, it's like find what you love, find what you do best, and learn all that you can to perfect that craft. You may not be perfect for every social media job that's out there, but the one that you are perfect for, you're going to be extra perfect for. So it's like, if video is the way you want to go, like dig into it, perfect that craft, spend your time, spend, whatever is it, 10,000 hours to really dig into and learn the, fronts and backs of what you need to be done, like what needs to be done in that position, and take the steps that you need to get there. I always tell everyone, anyone that I've worked with is like, if you're looking for your next job, just make sure it's on the path to where you want to go. You don't want to veer too far high or low, back and forth. It doesn't have to be necessarily linear, but make sure that it's kind of on that trajectory of this will help me build my resume in X, Y, and Z way, so that it's something you're always going to learn something new no matter what it is, but at least it'll kind of get you closer to where you're trying to go. So I mean, like for me when I'm hiring, it's hard to say there's a blanket statement of what I'm looking for because different roles require different things. Maybe I have a great team in place that can handle copywriting, can handle the strategy, can handle video production. I need a graphic designer or someone who has that background. I need someone who is very deep and ingrained into the analytical side and understands how to kind of monitor and gauge when things are doing well, when they're not, when to increase, when to decrease, and that side of things. So the best piece of advice I could give is, one, find what you love because that's the thing you're going to give the most effort for. But also, like the one thing I can't teach, no matter who I would bring in, I can't teach you to want to do this job. Like I can't teach you to be motivated. I can't teach you to, have that drive to just think of new ideas and always want to push the limits and never be satisfied. So that it's a mindset thing. It's those are the people that I look for is, maybe they're not as skilled or experienced in certain things, but I can teach them that if they want it bad enough. So it's very much like the soft skills are, as important, if not a little bit more important than those hard skills in some instances.
I think it's super valuable when you're sharing that to kind of double down in a thing, like go all in on video if that's your thing or whatnot, because to just spread yourself thin across the board, it's really hard to stand out. It's hard to be known uh, for anything, right? So I'm curious though, whether it's sports because you're with the Pirates, or let's say it was health and beauty, some other big brand, whatever. Do you need to be passionate about the topic? Like if you bring somebody on and they're like, I don't really love sports, but I'm really good at social media or whatever. Or do you see somebody, oh, they played college baseball, they're perfect for us because they get it. How important is it, whatever the category is, to be immersed in that category when you're going for that career?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be. I think again, I think it goes back to you have to love what you do. And so if you're so dedicated to your craft, a great example would be, my job in NASCAR. Was never a NASCAR fan. Still to this day would not even pretend to be a NASCAR fan. I don't think I watched a single thing that had to do with NASCAR the day I was done working there. But it was my opportunity and I was going to learn everything I could. I was going to dive into this head first and really go for it. And so that role worked really well because I was marketing to people like me, casual people who or sports fans, but didn't really know about NASCAR. How do we make NASCAR exciting for me? And so it was like when I was creating content, it was very personal and it was very easy for me to say, oh, well, I think this is cool. So like that's who we're trying to market to. I think when it gets more difficult is me being 38 years old, I need to make a TikTok video that 15-year-old kids like and want to follow the Pirates. Like that's the language gap almost in okay, well, how do I do that? Well, I have great young people on my staff who understand this stuff even better than I do, and we can kind of work through from both of our angles as to how we achieve that goal. So, I mean, I don't think you have to necessarily eat, live, and breathe whatever it is that you are representing, but you have to be willing to go that route and really, you know, dive into it as much as you can. And like I said, I'd never been to Arizona before I went for my interview, didn't know anything about the Cardinals except for Larry Fitzgerald played there and the Steelers beat them in Super Bowl 43, I think it was. And that was it. And like, but once I got there and I was in it and I'm with these players and I'm with this team and I'm building these strategies, it's like that's my favorite football team now is the Arizona Cardinals because of the 3 years I spent there and just the relationships you have there and the people you meet and just the roots you put down. It means the world. So it's like I think it's the starting point I don't think is as important as the end point where you may not be a fan when you walk in or you may not know everything you need to know about whatever the topic is, but by the time you get to the end it's going to make a big impact on your life.
All right. So if Coach Mike Tomlin, the coach of the Steelers, is listening, we're very sorry. Zach will reconsider his fandom. Don't worry. I have a super random question. I'm just curious about the world of social media these days. So to me, social media's got two halves. You got the marketing side and you got the PR side because crazy stuff happens, and then the PR side of social media is take over and issue statements and be careful about what you post and all. So I'm just curious in your world, does that all fall under one umbrella, kind of the crisis communications, I guess you call it, versus the marketing? Or does like the PR side take over when something's going on that has to happen?
I always describe it as like social is kind of right in the middle of the spider web of everything else that's happening. So whether it's, like I said, if it's some crisis or a player signing or a trade or, a funny video or we're selling tickets or we're covering this community event, it all ends up like we are the publication funnel of all of this news. So it's like, that's something that we keep in mind when we're building a strategy is where things go and how they're packaged and certain topics end up in certain places and different news and different communications end up in different places, but at the end of the day it's collaboration across the board. Like I'm working with you know every team that we have in this building basically on a daily basis to make sure that like we are not necessarily just achieving the goals of the social media department, we're achieving the goals of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so I don't have a firm grasp on every single thing that every department is trying to do. So that's where they come in. And that's where I'm reaching out to them for their support and their knowledge and their understanding and really digging into how we can help. We are probably the largest touch point that we have. And in most cases it's probably across the board in different brands, but like we're the biggest touch point directly to our fan base. So we need to make sure that we're not taking that responsibility lightly, and we're doing all that we can to do right by every organ or every department within the organization.
Yeah, that's a heavy responsibility. I never really even thought of it that way. Another heavy responsibility. All right, last thing I want to ask you. So as your kids get older, do you feel like if they're not the best baseball and softball players in the universe, that you have failed? Does everybody in the community think that you're a giant loser if your kids aren't the absolute best at baseball and softball, given the access that you have to the greatest talent in the world?
Oh man, I hope not. That's a lot of pressure. But no, I mean, I like my wife and I both played hockey all the way through college. I played baseball
Oh,
up until like my sophomore year of college. But so we have high hopes for our athletic children. But at the same time, I mean, if they want to play an instrument or dance or in drama or whatever they want to do, like I'd be 1,000% down and thankful.
yeah, that's true. My kids, they're now 17, 18. When they were little, I played baseball. I wanted to play baseball. They had a visceral reaction to it. They went to basketball, football, which I was thrilled about, but it's always the thing that you know best that you want them to do is they will do the opposite. That is what I've
Yeah,
learned. So,
of course. That's our daughter. She has all the different dresses to dress up like the Disney
yes.
princesses, and we put music on, and she loves to dance and she loves to sing. And it's like, well, but we have our hockey net over here. Do you want to play hockey? And sometimes, of course, but it's
Yeah,
whatever makes her smile, whatever makes her happy. Like that's all that
that's good.
matters.
That's good, man. Well, I appreciate you being here. Everybody follow Zach, Galia. How do I say it and spell it? I don't tell everybody. I don't
You
want to
got
screw this up.
it,
Okay, I
Galia.
definitely
You got it. You got it.
okay. My last name's impossible, so there you go. And you'll find him on LinkedIn. We're gonna put everything in the show notes. Zach, I really appreciate you being here, and hope the Pirates have a great next season.
Thank you, man. It was an honor to be here, and I can't thank you enough.
All right, man. Take care.